Anchoring effect. The anchoring effect is like when you hear the first price of something and that price sticks in your mind. For example, a toy was first marked as $20, but then you see it on sale for $10. You might think, wow, what a deal, because the first price you heard was $20. It shows how the first price sets a marker in your mind, making the discount seem even bigger. Kinetic depth effect. The kinetic depth effect is like when you watch something move and it helps you see it in 3D. A fun example is the spinning dancer illusion. It's a picture of a dancer that seems to spin around. Sometimes she looks like she's spinning to the left, and other times she's spinning to the right. This trick makes our brain think she's really spinning in space, showing how movement can make things look like they're popping out, even from a flat image. Bandwagon effect. The bandwagon effect is like when everyone starts liking something because it's popular, and you decide to like it too. Imagine if all your friends start wearing hats with funny slogans, and you want one too, even though you never liked them before. It's like following a trend just because everyone else is doing it. Confirmation bias. Imagine you think that cats are friendlier than dogs. When you see a friendly cat or a not so friendly dog, you remember it more because it supports what you already believe. That's confirmation bias when we pay more attention to things that agree with our existing opinions. Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever felt super confident about a test at school, only to be surprised by a not so great grade? Sometimes, when we know a little about something, we can overestimate how much we know. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Halo effect. If someone is really good at sports, people might also think they're friendly, smart, and funny, even if they don't know them well. That's the halo effect, where one good quality makes us think all their other qualities are good too. Hindsight bias. After a soccer game, saying, "I knew they were going to win," even if you weren't sure before the game, is hindsight bias. It's thinking we knew something was going to happen after it already did. In-group bias. This is like thinking your school is the best just because you go there. It's the feeling that people who are in our group, like our school, family, or team, are better than those in other groups. Mere exposure effect. If you hear a song you don't like much at first, but then hear it over and over, you might start to like it. That's the mere exposure effect, liking something more just because we see or hear it a lot. Bystander effect. The bystander effect happens when people don't help someone in trouble because they think someone else will do it. For example, if someone falls into a pond and many people are around, each person might wait for another to help. But because everyone thinks this way, no one ends up helping. Placebo effect. If you drink a cup of tea thinking it will make your headache go away, and it does, even if the tea was just water, that's the placebo effect. It's when just believing something will help actually makes us feel better. Self-serving bias. Imagine you win a game and think, "I won because I'm good." But if you lose, you think, "It was just bad luck." This is the self-serving bias, where we credit ourselves for good outcomes and blame outside factors for bad ones. Sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is like when you keep watching a boring movie because you've already watched half of it. You think, "I've spent so much time, I can't stop now," even though you're not enjoying it. It's when we don't want to waste what we've already used, like time or money, so we keep going even if it's not fun or helpful. Availability heuristic. If you watch a lot of movies about shark attacks, you might start to think they're common. That's the availability heuristic, thinking something is more common than it is because we see or hear about it more often. Fundamental attribution error. When someone is late, thinking they're always lazy instead of maybe they're stuck in traffic, is the fundamental attribution error. It's blaming people's character for things when there could be outside reasons. Optimism bias. Thinking you're less likely than others to get a cold is an example of optimism bias. It's when we believe that good things are more likely to happen to us than to others. Negativity bias. If you get 10 compliments and 1 insult, but you only think about the insult, that's negativity bias. It's when we pay more attention to bad news than good news. Social loafing. Social loafing is when people don't work as hard in a group as they do alone. Stroop effect. The Stroop effect is when your brain gets mixed up between the color of a word and what the word actually says. For example, if the word blue is written in red ink and you're asked to say the color, you might accidentally say blue instead of red. It shows how our brains work when seeing colors and reading words simultaneously. It's like a little brain puzzle, self-reference effect. The self-reference effect is when you remember information better if it's about you or relates to you. For example, if someone tells a story about a cat and your family has a cat, you're likely to remember that story better because it makes you think of your own cat. It's like your brain pays more attention to things that feel personal. Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also called the frequency illusion, is like when you learn a new word and then suddenly hear it everywhere. For example, if you just learned about flamingos and suddenly you notice flamingos in books, on TV, and maybe even on a t-shirt. It's not that there are more flamingos now, you're just noticing them more because they're on your mind. False consensus effect. If you love pineapple on pizza and think everyone else does too, that's the false consensus effect. It's thinking more people share our opinions and behaviors than they actually do. Gambler's fallacy. After flipping a coin and getting tails 5 times, thinking it must be heads next time, is the gambler's fallacy. It's wrongly believing that past events affect future ones in independent situations. Illusory correlation. Believing that eating chocolate causes acne because you had acne once after eating chocolate is an illusory correlation. It's seeing a connection between two things when there isn't one. Just world hypothesis. Thinking bad things don't happen to good people is the just world hypothesis. It's the belief that the world is fair and people always get what they deserve. Not invented here syndrome. If your school has a great idea for a fundraiser but doesn't use it because another school thought of it first, that's not invented here syndrome. It's avoiding things because we didn't come up with them. Overconfidence effect. The overconfidence effect is when we think we know more or are better at something than we actually are. Like, imagine you've played a video game once and then challenge a friend who's played it a lot, thinking you'll win. It's when we're super sure of ourselves, but maybe we shouldn't be. It teaches us to sometimes take a step back and think, do I really know this as well as I think I do? Paradox of choice. If you've ever felt overwhelmed choosing from 100 types of cereal, that's the paradox of choice. It's when having too many options makes it harder to make a decision. Priming effect. If you talk about rabbits, and then I ask you to name a vegetable, and you say carrot, that's priming. It's when earlier information influences how we think or behave later, even if we don't realize it. Pygmalion effect. Similar to the Rosenthal effect, if a coach believes a player has a lot of potentials, the player might improve just because of that belief. It's expectations affecting performance. Recency effect. If you remember the last items on your shopping list better than the first ones, that's the recency effect. It's the tendency to remember the most recent information better. Regression to the mean. If a student scores really high on one test and then more average on the next, that's regression to the mean. It's when things tend to even out over time. Restorff effect. If you remember one item in a list because it's in a different color, that's the Restorff effect. It's when something stands out, we're more likely to remember it. Serial position effect. Remembering the first and last names you hear in a list better than the middle ones combines the recency and primacy effects. It's easier to recall items from the beginning and end of a list. Stereotyping. Thinking all librarians are quiet is stereotyping. It's when we believe that all people in a certain group are the same. Survivorship bias. If you only listen to successful people's advice thinking it's the key to success, that's survivorship bias. It focuses on the winners and forgets about all those who tried and didn't make it.